Call this June 10th, 2014 work session of the Brookhaven City Council to order. Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor J. Max Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Rebecca Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Bates Madison.
Here.
And Councilmember Joe Gebbia.
Present.
All present. We have a quorum.
All right. Opening remarks. Food trucks, apparently the food trucks vendor for tomorrow night, there's a 80 or something % chance of rain, so they are canceling tomorrow's food truck event. Just to let everybody know that the food trucks will be canceled for tomorrow evening only. Thank you. Anybody else have any remarks, opening remarks? All right. We'll go on to the discussion and review of the noise ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, Emily Macheski will give this report.
Okay.
Good afternoon. As you know, we got one part of the noise
Turn on your mic.
Mic.
adopted. There we go.
There you go.
Last time, and that was to Chapter 16.
Could you start over?
Sure.
Okay.
As you know, we did Chapter 16 last time, and that was the noise ordinance, which made the noise, kind of updated the criminal and the fine portions of the noise ordinance. And now we've got a Chapter 7, which is to the building code. This is construction activities that we're kind of trying to regulate that a little better, make it a little bit easier for code enforcement to enforce. And we've also got some proposed changes to the zoning ordinance, which is Chapter 27, which is in your agenda packet as well. Chapter 27 has about 20 different portions that go through and regulate noise based on the zoning, and we decided just to kind of streamline that back to Chapter 16 so that you only have one ordinance. The alternative would be just to completely delete any reference to noise ordinance in Chapter 27. So we were looking for direction on that. We've got to go ahead and have some hearings. And then we're also in the works of Chapter 14, which is the land development regulations. The city is making some other changes to Chapter 14, so we're going to go ahead and do the hours for when you can do land development activities, just to make them the same as Chapter 7 for construction activities.
Okay. All right, so when will we have something, you think?
Well, we've got the Chapter 7 and the Chapter 27 in your packet. We have to have a public hearing for the 27th, and as soon as we finish, I think we're working on the tree ordinance for Chapter 14. We're just going to do Chapter 14 all at one time.
Okay. What are we doing with the tree ordinance?
I'm not sure about that, Susan.
I actually can't hear you. I'm sorry.
The tree ordinance that we're making some changes to?
We actually have a draft ordinance currently.
You turn your mic on?
Turn on your mic.
You can't hear me either, right? We currently have a draft ordinance that the staff is reviewing that we will bring forward to the council for the council to review during work session to determine whether we need to go forward with it in its current format and also to have public input. But we currently have a draft that we need to review one more time before we bring it to the council.
Is this just part of us going back and updating the ordinances from DeKalb we adopted?
It's actually
Or did
looking
it
at.
stem from something?
It's actually looking at the DeKalb ordinance and looking at how we need to make it apply to Brookhaven.
Okay,
And we need to bring that forward to the council for review and also for public view.
okay, all right. But we don't know if there'll be any changes or not yet. Or
Correct.
if you're gonna, okay, if you're gonna suggest any. Have you heard, I mean, has there been some reasons behind changing the tree ordinance? Or are there some problems that you've encountered, or are there some efficiencies? What is the?
There are some problems with the tree ordinance relative to tree protection, tree recompense.
For example?
Well, just the ability to calculate how, the calculations are not clear in the ordinance. There's replacement of density factors, there's tree canopy that is not possibly addressed the way it should be. So we're looking at what we currently have and looking at what we can do is better for Brookhaven.
Okay.
So we really need you all to see it, and we really need to have public input.
Okay, all right.
Emily, could you just briefly review then the changes that we're looking at in 7? I mean, I'm just seeing
Sure.
the definitions mainly. Is it something more substantive?
Yeah, we went through and defined what construction activity was. That was one of the biggest problems happening, because you're limited during what hours and what times you can do construction. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear what you're actually prohibited from doing when. So construction activity, construction deliveries, that was another big complaint that was happening from residents. Then if you go down to the application for a permit in section 730E, it's also making a verification that everybody who's applying for a permit's got a sign saying that they agree to follow these ordinances to make it a little bit easier to enforce in municipal court. I think we're getting a lot of defenses of, I didn't know it was illegal in municipal court. And then
I'm sorry, what section is that? That's on
730
E?
730E, and that's the application for a permit. I think it's page 5 and 6.
I think it's page 2.
Are you on the work?
Work session?
Yeah, 730E is page 3 of the,
Yeah, it's 3. Mhm.
Yeah. There it is.
Then I believe Bates had asked for a permit kind of system so that that they would get repeated violations, that developers would be prohibited from doing business in Brookhaven. Since we don't currently license our developers, we kind of presented an alternative, which is right under the section we're talking about, section 730M, which basically makes it illegal to get a permit if you've been convicted 3 times of violating the ordinance in the past year, or if you've had your a previous permit revoked 1 time in the past year.
How's the subcontractor portion of it dealt with?
It's the same thing. It makes it, the subcontractors can be fined the same as the contractor.
Well, can the contractor be held responsible for the indiscretions of his subcontractor?
That's how it's drafted
Oh, it
right
is?
now,
Okay.
yes. And then the permit part, 730M, that's limited to whoever's actually applying, because that's pretty much the only way we can regulate it.
Okay.
But anybody can be cited with a violation. And the contractor and the subcontractor could both be cited for a violation, so.
how's that discretion? Is that discretion of the code compliance officer on who gets cited?
Yes. It could be the code compliance, and I believe the police officers also have the
Yeah.
authority to do it.
On page 171, at the bottom, just a little, just that word should be removable, next to the last line. See at the very bottom, page 171.
Demolition activity.
Intentional destruction or removal, it should say.
Okay. We can change that.
The times listed here in section 731.1C, is that the same as what they are now, 7 to 7 p.m. and Saturday 8 to 5?
Yes. And no activity on Sunday.
Does that include indoor?
It's any activity that's required to be permitted. That's under the definition, anything that you would have to have a permit to do. So there are some home repairs, emergency plumbing isn't considered in that. Anything that falls under the exception that's already there in the code isn't considered part of that activity.
Have we talked to any builders about this?
No, I believe that council had asked for us to schedule a public hearing, and that's what we're here now, ready to
Right.
do.
Only one thing I could think of that, because, this is coming from us and from the citizens who have been griping about
Sure.
these legitimate concerns. When a house is enclosed, with windows and doors, and you got a tile guy working in the house, inside, that's kind of one thing that I would want to, that's not really going to cause a lot of noise, if the house is sealed,
Right now, painting and everything is under the hour restriction. If we
Right.
want to further carve it out, we can, but that's not something that we've done now.
Is there a point at which a house reaches a certain threshold where where they get a permit and they're enclosed, and then somebody could, because what I would hate to see, if you got a homeowner who's got a permit, like I had to get a permit for my wiring,
Right, after it's.
telling me I can't do it on a Sunday.
Right, well, after the house is framed and then all the wiring is run, and that's inspected, then the sheetrock is allowed to cover that work. And once the sheetrock is up, then you have most of the interior finishes that are occurring.
Right.
Flooring is going down, and any, special cabinetry work
Right.
is being built, and of course, the tile work would be part of that as well.
Right.
So it's really the fixtures almost that can't occur until the framing inspection and the wiring inspection is completed so they can cover.
But
I
we're
just wanna-
saying none of this can be done on Sundays.
Right. I just want to check
Right.
that to see if that's a unnecessary restriction after, when the
Right.
noise is going to be abated by everything being
Right, well,
closed.
that almost sometimes falls in line with, the delivery of
Right.
washer and dryer that's set
Right.
up, especially if it's a stackable one,
Right.
requires one or two men to come in and do that. So I think, we would have to define what that activity is. I think some of the complaints that we've received, or what triggers a complaint, is to see the contractor's van or truck out there, even though they're not doing anything
Right.
out there, that it just triggers that complaint. But that
The
truck could
purpose of
also
this
be.
is to let people quietly enjoy their property.
Correct.
And if somebody's in an enclosed house doing work,
Right,
is it really
right.
a reason to?
Exactly, and with a tile contractor, as long as they're cutting the tile inside the
Right,
house.
exactly.
And not going outside to do that, and sometimes they do. But if
Well, that would
that
be a
is.
violation, right?
Correct, but if they're doing it inside,
Right,
then, and by that time too, the windows are in.
right,
Right now, it's all a violation.
right. So I just want to look at, maybe we keep it exactly how you've got it, but I'd like to look at that one.
Some builders
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that,
I'd like to hear that
Yeah,
one little.
we have to have a public hearing on Chapter 14 and Chapter 27, so if you want to do all three, or even just have a forum, we could certainly do that on all
So we'll
three.
send an email about the public hearing to everybody.
This would be a good one possibly to put before the construction committee that
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
looking forward to putting together.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'd say my preference is it's time for us to have a builder summit. I think that's the right opportunity rather than a public hearing on it. Let's have that two-way dialogue at a forum.
we got to have a public hearing too.
Right,
It-
both,
I don't,
Have
I
that
don't-
before the public hearing.
exactly.
If I might add a comment too, sometimes they're quiet inside, but it's what's happening outside as they drive up with the truck
Right.
to deliver the materials.
Okay,
So
well, I
that's one of the
mean,
issues as well.
Okay, we need to look at the nature of the complaints that we've been getting, and most of them have been noise-oriented.
Right.
They've been external. So I really
And
think.
the noise of the trucks have usually been at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right,
type
well,
thing, yeah.
I mean, that's simple, no deliveries on Sundays. If you want to work inside, it's got to be a contained house, do
Yeah.
your delivery on Friday.
Right.
But, with the busy schedule people have, sometimes you can't be there during the week to have the wire put in for
Right,
whatever.
right.
We need to be sensitive to this and not over-regulate for the
Right.
sake of regulation.
Right.
The thrust of this is to make sure that we're addressing what is the nature of the complaint,
Right.
which is the external noise.
Right.
And I would like to see something that would be more open, and I think a builders summit or a builders conference would really help identify. But I don't know, I'd not necessarily move in the direction of legislating just for the sake of
I
legislating.
know, yeah, that's why I brought it up. I want to check
Mm-hmm.
that for, maybe we need to keep it exactly how you draft it, but maybe there's something we don't know about that we need to hear from the trade people from too.
Right, and the hours are.
This is regulating them completely
Right.
for the benefit of our citizens, which is what the purpose of it is. And we want to make sure that we don't overreach.
The hours are already in your Chapter 7, so
Right.
until you make up, or we reach a good solution for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you still have some protection.
Do you want to, when you look at the hours, it says Monday through Friday, and then it says Saturday? There's no addressing Sunday?
It just says Sunday, you can't.
Day is not allowed.
Okay.
We'll just look at that when we have the builder summit and then the public hearing. We'll just make a note that that's an issue we want to talk about. Thank you. All right, next.
Next item is the consideration and approval of amendment to Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages, corking in restaurants. The city attorney has that.
Okay, if you should have another handout. The one in the package was an older version that I accidentally sent to the clerk. And briefly, what this was really is a response from restaurants who serve wine, who wanted to have the opportunity for their customers to bring in a bottle of wine if they wish to have that bottle of wine with their meal, and that would be at the discretion of the restaurant whether or not they would be able to do so. We had no ordinance either prohibiting or saying you could do it. So we have added a corkage ordinance, which we did have a bottle club and a bottle corkage ordinance, which related to supper clubs that would seat more than 200 people who otherwise were not licensed under the alcoholic beverage ordinance could have this type of activity. So that's been deleted completely and added this new ordinance, which basically says this: if you serve food, okay, and you are also licensed for the sale of alcoholic beverages, then if you so wish to, you can have customers bring in a bottle of wine, and you can serve it to them during the meals only. They have to display the bottle of wine and give it to the restaurateur at the time they arrive or at the time that they're seated at the table, and can only be served during meals. And if they don't consume all the wine, then and they wish to take it back, then it has to be recorked, or in the case of some of the wines that are screw tops today, they would have to be.
That's your kind of wine.
Have you ever tried Conundrum, Mayor?
No, I have not.
I'll bring you a bottle.
What about Ripple?
Conundrum.
wines are
Conundrum. But be that as it may, it then has to be put into a brown bag, a package, and basically sealed in a way that if somebody else were to look at it to determine whether it had been opened or not, and handed back to them. So the intent here is to create an environment where, not one where you would have a bar and somebody serving hot dogs and they're, coming in and bringing in their own wine and whooping it up, but really as far as full-service menu type restaurants that this would apply to. And also the ordinance allows the restaurateur to charge a fee, if it so chooses to do so, for opening and serving the wine.
All right. Looks
Great
good to
work.
me. Yeah.
So it's left up to the restaurant to determine what the sealing of the package is?
Well, it's left up to the restaurant as to whether or not they will permit
Maybe
it.
Bates was, did you ask about
And
this?
then if they permit it, and if the restaurant, if the patron wishes to take any unfinished wine home, then the restaurant has to seal it and basically reseal it in the manner in which it had been opened and put it in a bag of some sort of container and give it back to them to take out of the restaurant. And the latter part, if you say why are we going through this stuff about the brown bag, there's actually an ordinance under state law that talks about that. And so that's really coming to the point of really trying to follow state law.
This ordinance was
So the color of the bag doesn't have to be brown, though, does it?
No.
it was a response to
Good
a
question.
business, a restaurant in District 3 that had their city attorney look into this and found that we didn't have anything that properly allowed them to allow people to bring their own fine wines if they had a special occasion to bring into their restaurant, where they already served beer and wine and had a license to do so. We needed to have this amendment to allow people to bring in special occasion wines that restaurant may not have.
I have two questions. Maybe I just missed it, but one is, are they able to do this with a bottle of wine that they purchased from the restaurant also,
Take it home with them?
and take it home with them?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, yes, you can do that. That's under our ordinance now.
The state law, too, isn't it?
Yeah. In other words, if you purchase a bottle of wine and don't consume it all, I've never seen that take place, but if you don't consume it all, they can record it, but they have to put it in, they not only have to put it in the bag, but they also have to put the receipt to show that they purchased it.
Okay, great. Well, I mean,
All right.
what's the difference then? I mean, how are they going to know if they purchased it there or if they brought it on their own? Because they bring it on their own, they're not going to have a receipt. It's going to be in the same bag, but anyway. Is there a state law that says you cannot drive with an open container?
Yes.
And is a bottle that has been opened, even though recorked, considered an open container?
If it's recorked and it's in the bag and it's not in the front seat of the car,
Got it.
in between the legs of the driver,
But with no siphon coming over, right?
that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Next, let's see.
This is again, Chapter 4, failure to require and properly check identification, serving, or selling alcohol to minors.
And this is just an addition to the existing ordinance that we have for the sale to minors, expanding it with regard to the matter concerning the requirement to check identification and holding the restaurateur responsible in the event that that's not done, and also provides that it requires training and other such activities with the staff to make sure that they are properly identifying, getting the identification that's necessary to determine whether or not there's underage drinking, and also identifies the type of identification that is considered valid for purposes of making this determination, i.e. driver's license, passport, something with a picture that's on it.
Tom, I had a question about Section E, about it's okay to serve a person under 21 years of age when the parent or guardian of the person gives the alcohol to the person. Now, is that only in the possession of the home, or could that be in a restaurant as well?
No, not in the restaurant. In other words, you
Yeah.
cannot serve, they cannot be served under the age of 21 in the restaurant.
Parent.
But what this is what it's called the parent rule, that if you want to give it to your kids at home, that's fine. The one thing I guess I had a concern about this particular situation is that there's no limitation on age as far as how young they can be, and I started playing around with that and saying, well, at what point in time do you do that? But then, if somebody's giving, alcohol to a 5-year-old or whatever, then they're really coming under other ordinances, other state laws as far as, relating to, the treatment of minors and the children. So I left that alone.
I just know, having recently had children, young adults who were, 20-something, like on the verge of 21, you could sometimes go to a restaurant, and the restaurant would ask you, if your parent says, okay, you can have a glass of wine or something.
I have not, I'm not aware of that because it's clear that you can't serve them.
Well, Florida does that, but
Okay.
I'm just curious whether we would. I mean, I'm not advocating for it, I'm just, but you do I do know that you reach this point with kids when they are like on the verge of 21 or something.
Thank you. All right. Next.
The next item is an update on the front yard setback averaging. As you'll recall, we did solicit comments from the public through our website, and Ms. Cannon has that information, and we'll talk about next steps
Okay.
from her comments.
Go ahead, Susan.
You have been provided with a list of the comments we've received since posting it on the website. To date, we've received about 37 responses from the general public.
Where is this? Where is
Handed it to us.
You should have a copy.
3 pages.
Okay, go ahead.
And it appears that the majority of the comments tend to lean towards not making a change to the average front yard setback. Some comments do indicate should probably be a look taken at making changes to the front yard setback, average front yard setback. From the staff perspective, if the council does see it appropriate to make a change to the average front yard setback, the staff would recommend that one item we address is that in the current language, there's reference to the requirement that the average setback be applied if the same zoning is in effect on the same side of the street adjacent to the property. We would recommend that regardless of zoning, whether it's R100, R75, R85, or the like, that if there are existing homes on either side of a lot, that no matter what the zoning is, that the average front yard setback should apply. So we would recommend that that be a change that is considered. However, if there is a lot that is empty adjacent to a lot proposed to be developed upon, that it should default to the minimum of the district. So I think that we should probably look at some clarification in that regard. But based on the responses that we've received and the practice that has occurred, that at this point would be the change that the staff would recommend.
Did you have look into any districts where it might be different for different, were you able to break down any of the comments from people about what areas they lived in, did they give addresses?
They did give addresses. The information that you have has been redacted from the information. But we've supplied you with all the comments that we've received.
I see that somebody had mentioned that the corner lot should be included in the average setback. I would hope at the very least that we would clarify the language in our existing ordinance. I think it's very confusing you have to read it about 8 times to understand that corner lots are not included in the average setback.
That's correct.
One of the things I would like to suggest is that when we hold our Builder Summit to talk about the noise ordinance and, what constitutes noise and what kind of activities associated with it, that we would also have this as part of the subject of that summit and get some feedback from the builders. This is primarily and predominantly residents that have made comments, so we would like to hear from the other side. And of course, when we have this Builder Summit, anybody's welcome to come, and we would encourage residents as well as builders to be there so that we could get one more reading of comments, and then we can answer questions for those that might have questions regarding this matter. And then we would want to bring that back before you all to share that information and then to get direction to move forward. This will have to go to any kind of amendment to the zoning ordinance that takes into consideration the average setback, lack thereof, or inclusion of, or refined in any manner, would have to be revised in the amended to the zoning ordinance. So a public hearing would have to be held both by Planning Commission and the council.
One question, corner lots, why is that not included in your dealing with the corner lot issue?
Because from a staff perspective, it's clear to us how to interpret the ordinance. And in our view and interpretation of the ordinance, corner lots are not included in the average setback. They have their own distinct setback requirement.
What
I think there probably is confusion that the corner
Well,
lot.
there is confusion because it says that each street on a corner lot, you have to meet the required front yard setback. It
Right.
doesn't say, the average and what is the required front
Right.
yard setback. Certainly, and I spent some time looking at that today and discussing it with Ms. Cannon and Mr. Song, and I concur with their interpretation of that.
I'd rather not have an interpretation, I'd rather it just be black and white.
No, well, it's not black and white. It needs to be considered because the other side of it is that if you use average yard setback, and in the one case we were looking at tonight, that you're coming up tonight, you would not be able to get to 2 houses on each side of the street, on the same street, which is what the average setback says today. You couldn't get to 2 houses anyway.
Right.
So you're back to what the zoning classification says should be the front yard setback.
Can you address that can y'all address that one issue? And then before the next
When we have the
meeting?
public hearing? Yeah.
I mean, just language
Yeah.
on clarifying that.
Well, clearly, yeah, it needs to be clarified
Okay.
because of the term required front yard setback. One could argue that includes average front yard setback, or one could argue that it's the front yard setback that's deemed in the zoning district.
And some of the comments look like they're dealing with side setbacks. People might have been confused about it, but we're not proposing changing any of the side setbacks.
Well, we didn't want to
Right.
censor anything that we received.
Right.
So we wanted you to see what we had received relative to setbacks.
Okay.
Susan, what's the status of average setback in our neighboring counties and municipalities?
We did that research a while back when we prepared the residential structure map, and we looked at the city of Atlanta The city of Atlanta does have an average setback. It's different from DeKalb counties. The city of, we looked at the city of Decatur. We looked at Roswell because they do have some infill development. We have, obviously, DeKalb County has it. The city of Dunwoody has it. And they all have a different method by which they apply it. And we can share that with you, but they're all done differently. But primarily in the metropolitan area, it's been DeKalb, Atlanta, and the cities that stem out of DeKalb, and then the city of Atlanta that apply average setback. We didn't really find any other metropolitan areas outside DeKalb or the cities of DeKalb that utilize average setback. And possibly it's an infill development.
Or older neighborhoods.
Correct.
I'd be very interested in seeing just a brief description of how each one does it.
Right, I would too.
We can share that with you. We have a spreadsheet that identifies all of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm more concerned that I think the language in in the code that we inherited is pretty confusing,
Yes.
and two people can read it two different ways, and it just shouldn't be that vague or that subject to interpretation.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd like to have a shorter, less confusing ordinance that addresses it. So,
I think we would all agree with that.
okay. All
Okay,
right,
good.
thank you. Other agenda items.
Okay. Other agenda items, don't have any,
All right. Other business?
none.
Pre-regular meeting agenda review.
All right, this goes to our council meeting agenda. We do have 6 items under the consent agenda, 3 of which are meeting minutes. The 4th is a resolution to establish the streetlight district on Blair Circle, Durden Drive, Durden Road, and Ashton Wood Drive. The 5th item is consideration and approval of authorization for city manager and mayor to enter into a contract with Stewart Brothers, Inc. for the 2014 capital paving project. You do have that list at your desk.
Is this the new paver that Richard is,
Okay, we'll get your head out of the way.
Richard?
what was the reason we switched when their
Well, this one we did it.
liability?
Well, we did a formal
yeah,
invitation
yeah.
for bid for this one because of the volume, and it's required under, actually because it's the over $100,000 where it's required under state law to do. So we did a formal bid. We received 5 bids. Stewart Brothers was the low bidder. They actually came in a little bit under what our estimate was going to be for this, so we're recommending awarding and entering into a contract
Have
with
you worked
them.
with them before?
I haven't worked with Stewart Brothers. Of course, as a city, we haven't worked with any paver
Right.
except for the one before. However, I do know that the CEO of Stewart Brothers is actually a Brookhaven resident. The company is not here, but the CEO actually lives in Brookhaven, in historic Brookhaven.
Well, that's good. We'll know where to find them.
Yeah, exactly. We purchased some eggs for our citizens to egg the,
Yeah.
didn't get done. Well, that's good. So you're comfortable, because I know the reliability was somewhat of an issue.
Yeah,
You did
and
good work with the reliability.
the other firm that we had worked with in the past did not bid on it. They
Okay.
did not respond, so.
Okay.
But we're comfortable with them. I mean, Stewart Brothers has a good reputation
Okay.
in the industry, so we think we got a good
Okay.
contractor. so.
Okay, good. Good to hear that.
Okay, the 6th item on consent agenda is consideration and approval of an intergovernmental agreement between DeKalb County and the city of Brookhaven for electronic warrant interchange system.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this council has passed previously the warrant IGA agreement between DeKalb County, or with DeKalb County. The purpose of this is to actually incorporate certain comments that we had proposed to the document, and also to include the various exhibits that the police department indicated should be included in that document.
Okay.
So it's really it's a new ratification of something that's already been approved.
All right. Next.
Okay,
announcement.
under announcements, appointment of Pilot Sanitation Review Steering Committee. This is Mr. Gebbia's initiative. He was asking for any recommendations from you all. If you've all completed that, we can move forward with that appointment because the pilot program is about halfway there.
All right.
I have one I'm going to put on our list, but Bates had a very good suggestion, and since we have not appointed anybody at this time, I think probably a revised version or effort on this should probably be to include only people that are involved in the pilot program.
Right.
And that would be you, Rebecca, and then people in District 2.
All right.
You mean me personally?
Well,
Well,
Oh, in District 1?
yeah, yes.
Is Murphy Candler
Sure.
and,
Johnson's Ferry over around that way. So why don't we do that
all right.
and
Okay.
hold off till
Okay,
the
we'll wait
next
till our
meeting.
next meeting, and we'll just round back with you all.
Yeah, I
The,
think
the,
Contact
the
you, please.
intent of this is to have citizens evaluate the success of the program, and who better to do it than the ones that are actually participating, because, even though we don't control the program, it's DeKalb County Sanitation that's controlling it. We want to be able to provide input if there are deficiencies or things that could be done better, or if it's going well, acknowledge them for it,
Right.
and then just move on.
All right.
And also use this as a platform to help communicate to the rest of the city should the program go
Right.
citywide in August.
will this group, we've already been hearing some complaints and problems in specific areas. But we've been trying to refer those to DeKalb County.
It has to go to DeKalb County.
Okay.
They're all DeKalb County issues. It's their program.
All right.
But you want the steering committee to be made aware of this and
Well,
understand?
the Kennesaw State has prepared a questionnaire that's going to be going out. But we would like to have our residents be able to evaluate what the responses are, so we know what the impact is.
Okay.
And if we can have any input on it, because this is going to be, once the change is made, it's permanent.
So things like there's 2 condominium projects in District 1 that literally just don't have the space to.
Yeah, no one's forced to participate in the
And
program.
so just the sheer size and the fact they don't have driveways or carports, they've asked to be relief.
If
Right.
anybody does not want to participate,
Right.
there's no forced participation in this program. But the benefits appear to outweigh the disadvantages at this point.
But unfortunately, they were delivered all their bins, and now they want them all picked up. And, if we'd kind of thought this through a little bit more.
Well, it's not our point, it's not our position
wasn't our-
to think through it.
Well,
This
I
is
know.
DeKalb
Okay.
County. They don't tell us, they just do it.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't want to mislead people
That's
that
what
the
I'm saying.
steering
If-
committee is going to somehow have power to say,
Well,
They'll address, they'll gather problems. and
These are the
comments
kind
like
of
that.
issues,
Yeah.
if we can
That they will
present this,
compile.
we can prevent
Okay.
these
So that we
types
can
of
take it to the
problems.
county.
or the elderly people who can't get that 65-gallon
Well,
up or down their driveway.
in those situations, rear pickup is available. All they have to do is ask for it. It's available to anybody
Okay.
that needs it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
these are the kind of things
Great.
that we might be able to offset.
How many people in the county are in this program? Do you have any idea?
I know it's in 5 cities. I think we're the largest of the 5. We were supposed to be 1,000. We ended up being 2,900 plus. 28,000 total? Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting, okay.
All right.
So we're about 10% of it, a little bit more.
I think it's important just to state for the record and just to follow up with Councilman Williams on her point. As I envision the steering committee, it's just to collect information.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think we can be the clearinghouse for that, and then to transmit that information to the county as to what we're hearing, and depending on, how much time we have, we might even want to put something on our website just to solicit comments for those that are participating in the program. Give us a comment.
Right.
Is it good or bad, any suggestions, and we can collect that and share that with the committee members. They can add to it, and then merely transmit it. So I don't even see the committee meeting more than once or twice.
Right, it's a short-lived committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank
Good.
you.
I like that.
Parks purchase?
Yes, that's our city attorney.
All right, as a report from the last meeting, we advised the county of our desire to do additional environmental testing with regard to Brookhaven Park, Blackburn Park, and also Linwood Park. Brookhaven and Blackburn related to conditions that were affected off-site by gas stations or a dry cleaner. Linwood involved some old drums that are sitting in the woods on a rock quarry that are there. We advised the county that we would like to do that the county came back and said, you know, if you'll accept the liability for any cleanup, we certainly would approve that, and I said no. And so we decided to have the environmental lawyers look at it, and so Bill Holland, with our firm, who's got extensive experience, looked at the situation. He's prepared a memorandum. I have not distributed it to you, but it says this, that the consultant said you ought to look at it, said, but also he said that there's no danger of life or health of the citizens associated with it. And if you go back to the statute relating to what our duty is as a city, is to make that assessment ourselves. And if we come to the assessment that while there may be some disclosure, and I'll explain what this disclosure is, there is some disclosure if there's no reason that there's going to hurt, you know, the health and welfare of the citizenry, then under the Georgia statute, you can take the park. You make that determination yourself. The point is that actually these two areas that have been disclosed are closed sites. They're old sites. The EPD has already issued closure letters. So more likely than not, you would not find any sort of additional residue that would have been there that otherwise would have leached away over the period of time. And I think other than the drums, I think we would, if we can work through the issues with the county, we'd be acceptable in not doing it if the county said, no, we don't want you to test it. The one thing we lose is what they call the innocent purchaser defense. However, if you went back to the source, there would still be the requirement that the source would actually have to pay for any of the cleanup or anything that would take place. I think what I'm trying to tell you is that these issues at Brookhaven and Blackburn are not significant, and
I certainly would want to know what's in the drums at Linwood before
yeah,
we
but
purchase.
those I would ask the county to take care of.
Are
but
the
other
drums
two-
leaking? Are the drums leaking?
Don't know.
We have-
I
they-
mean, all we have are pictures of old rusted drums sitting on gravel in somewhere in the woods. So it looks suspect, and we, you know, and the
Could be filled with gold, so maybe we don't want to.
Could be a bootlegging
I
operation.
doubt it. But the environmental engineer said that should be done, and
Yeah,
we could
okay.
certainly
Well,
ask the county
definitely.
to take that over.
Yeah.
And just as a final report, the city manager and I have a meeting with the, what's the board that has the?
DeKalb Service Board.
The DeKalb Service Board as it relates to Brookhaven Park and our offer to the county to take over everything and leave that there for them. So we're actually having a meeting tomorrow to discuss that issue.
Okay.
And hopefully, if, you know, we have a little sidebar discussion regarding the environmental issues, we can come to some resolution on everything tomorrow.
Okay.
When did we make this request on the, this environmental review to the county?
After the last council meeting.
I suspect this is all done with good lawyering, but I'm actually kind of distressed we've done this because, first of all, I don't envision that DeKalb would do a second environmental study after they've already done one. I think ultimately it falls to us, and as far as I can see, and what I understand, is that this has just further delayed us getting the parks. We've been trying to get these parks now for over a year, and it was my understanding, talking to our commissioners, we were on the verge of getting them today, and it didn't happen. And this last-minute appeal by us, I'm sure it was all well-intended, threw a wrench in the works. I'm just raising this point because I'm very frustrated that we haven't gotten the parks. And not getting the parks is having all kinds of ramifications.
May I respond?
Yeah, sure.
In the first place, we were the ones who ordered and paid for the environmental reports because we were required to by state law.
Right.
We did not get those environmental reports until probably 2 weeks before we did any notification of them to give us the time to review those. They were delivered after the date that we gave notice that we were to acquire all the parks, but we couldn't close on those until we had the final review of the environmental. based upon those reports and based upon the recommendation in those reports, I recommended to council at the last meeting to ask DeKalb County for permission to do a Phase 2, basically drill some holes in each of, and check the groundwater in each of Brookhaven Park and Blackburn Park.
You asked for them to do that or for us to do that?
No, we would do that. Okay, we're not asking them to do that. The testing is our requirement under the statute. So that's why, that's why we're here where we are, and we've had the issue of Blackburn, and as far as how to deal, they're saying the front portion is not a park, we're saying it's a
Brookhaven.
park, but whatever.
Brookhaven, not Blackburn.
I'm sorry, Brookhaven, excuse me. So they're.
I mean, that issue's still in resolve.
But that's-
But still, I mean, I guess the final point is that, yes, you're right, we don't own the parks, but we've been managing and controlling the parks, but we're also spending money at our own risk.
Yes, indeed we are, but we can't issue a permit, we can't grade, we can't move utilities, we can't make capital expenditures, we can't, grant an easement to a utility. I think many of our citizens are very frustrated that we still haven't, consummated this deal. I understand the scrutiny, but I just don't think anything is going to change. We're ultimately going to be responsible for the environmental status, and you just told us now that the lawyers had said there's nothing, of imminent harm.
And that's why I'm giving this report, to the effect that if you say, let's go forward, because we're saying we're within the statute with the ability to do that after the environmental lawyers have looked at it, we can do that.
But I thought as of last meeting, there was still no agreement on Brookhaven Park. They were still holding
No,
off the 10.
they're not, and that's why we're having this meeting tomorrow.
But we had also talked about pulling that one out and going ahead and
And then he
taking
said-
ownership of the others.
Right, we did, but then he said that wasn't a good idea.
That's right.
That was like a month ago. They said we shouldn't.
Let's just resolve it all. If we want to, if the direction of council is to bifurcate the ones that we have no issue,
I mean, we thought
can
that
do
that was an option at one
Yeah,
point, but I
mean,
thought last
think
time we
can
talked.
do that, and we can come to that resolution tomorrow. But we still have 3 parks, that there's identified conditions, and we have 1 park that we have to survey out a fire station, which, we've gotten the proposal to do that.
Why don't we, if it's okay to bifurcate now, let's do that. And I still want to, I don't want to, if it's going to in any way affect us getting the 10 acres for Brookhaven Park, I'd say not to, but,
Can you remind us why it was not suggested that we separate?
I'm sorry?
What was the downside in not separating?
Well, I think it's really gone 2 ways.
What was the downside in separating?
We actually gave closing statements for each park separately, so that to have the ability to go ahead and close them. And so we have done that. Then as these other issues afford, we're trying to deal with these other issues to close them all at one time. I see no reason not to go forward with the ones that we have no issues with, and going ahead and tendering the money and closing those, and I believe the county would agree to that.
That was my understanding as to what we were doing. I don't remember us agreeing that we had to do it all
Well,
or
what's,
nothing.
Mrs. Williams, I think where it really is that if you're sitting there dealing with the lawyers and we're saying we want to do this and say no, we want to wait that, it's not just our decision that's taking this effect. It's just the matter of what's taking place with the legal staffs, not only us but theirs. But I hear you loud and clear, and I hear council loud and clear. Let's get this thing closed and behind
Well,
us.
it's my understanding that they've, dug their heels in on Brookhaven Park, and so it looks like that's going to take a little bit more work. I'm saying, in the meantime, let's get the other 10, 11 parks and
If they will do that,
and
let's
move
definitely
forward.
do
Okay,
that.
then we'll proceed,
Except for the barrels.
except for the barrels.
Well, where are these
Except for the-
barrels?
They're probably in the.
Linwood.
They're
Linwood
Probably
Park.
at Linwood 2, which is the old, where the old pool was down the
I'd
street.
even bifurcate that one.
I'd bifurcate that, if that's where it is.
If that's real, I can't imagine, your environmental guys have already said that there's no,
No, not with the
Not on that
drums,
one.
not with the
You
drums.
said the other 2 parks was.
and
The other
what,
two.
what's going on at Blackburn? What are you talking about? Is it,
There was a leaking gas tank across the street. And the park
Valero?
is down gradient, so when it leaches, it would have leached under the ground, in the groundwater under the park,
How long ago was this?
number of years ago.
A decade, 2 decades? I mean, what do we?
I'll have to go back and look at the times, but they have been closed.
So the
EPD is closed, has done the closure.
The drums are at Linwood. I know you probably don't know exactly what it's probably Linwood 2 where the old pool was, where you said it was a quarry. It was actually, there's a lot of stone there because they tore up a pool. But it's just that 10-acre area. So the rest of Linwood Park, if the barrels aren't there, let's close on that.
I even suggested to them that we would survey out the area where the drums were and they
Okay.
could keep it.
All right.
I mean, the mayor has been asking people to call and write their commissioners to get this done, and really, it's not, they're not holding it up. We've
Well,
been
they are
actually-
holding up Brookhaven Park, which is what I've been talking about.
Well, yes and no. I think their legal department has.
That's exactly, the county. The county's legal department, that lady, has dug their heels on not giving us the 10 acres at Front Peachtree at Brookhaven Park, and it's still an issue.
It is. So can we separate that out and get the other
Yes, ma'am.
12 car parks?
We can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is, excuse me,
I can't
turn the
s-
page.
I'm on my booster seat here, too, and I still can't see you all.
Okay.
And right now, there's a fire under it.
Right, item 3 and 4, if we could take those together, please. Those are the sidewalk update and the paving update. Richard? No.
The camera goes to use. I love it.
Excellent.
On the, so the paving update is real quick, is that we have done the bid, and that's the contracts on the agenda tonight for approval. Once we get that contractor underway, we're hoping to get within the next couple weeks, get them notice to, get all the contract documents signed and notice to proceed and get him started. On the sidewalks, an update, we've substantially completed the Harts Mill sidewalk and crossing. The only thing we have to do, there's some signage that we have to put in place there, that the signs were on back order, which should be done in the next couple weeks.
What are we looking
What
at?
have we looked
I'll get to that in a minute. This is Curtis Drive. Let me get through the ones that we finished first. So we've also completed the sidewalk on Kusawati, substantially completed. There's still a couple minor punch-out items that we have to do, but the sidewalk is poured and open. They were starting to, the Drew Valley sidewalk, they were starting to work on this week. Hopefully, I think may have even been out there mobilizing out there today, if not tomorrow. And we also have, what we're looking at here is the Curtis Drive sidewalk, which a separate company contractor, we have 2 different contractors working on these sidewalks, is mobilizing out there later this week to start this project. In this one, the Drew Valley one should be done, is probably only going to take 3 or 4 days to do. Curtis Drive will probably take a little bit longer because we have a small retaining wall and it's a larger project, but probably no more than a couple weeks to do. I know it's a little bit hard to see. I don't know if you can zoom.
Yeah, you can use your finger as a wand.
Yeah, I'll use my finger as I got a pen here.
I got to ask one question before you
Yes, sir.
continue. Why are the revised costs seemingly every time above what the estimated costs were? Is that because of that old contractor, or?
No, I'm not sure which update you're looking
The
at.
This is what I got, this 2013 paving plan update.
Oh, the paving plan. That's an old one. That was on the 2013 paving, and that was, what that was on the quantities especially on Stratfield, is when we did the bid, we underestimated the amount of milling that had to be done on those projects. And so what the cost that's in there reflected on those 2013 reflected the additional milling cost we had. Now, we are going to get some credit back from the company that did the work for the additional, because it was more milling, they could do it for a lesser price. They were going to, they're supposed to get me a final invoice on that. And also the one road on there, Pamela, which was not done, we're going to roll that because, one, with difficulties we were dealing with the old contractor, and because we got better unit rates from the new contractor, we're just going to roll that into having the new contractor do that as part of his list. So,
Just wondering why.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand cost I understand it, but it seems like
The-
20%, 30%.
the unit price, that was really on our part. We underestimated. We did it as a unit price contract. So we set a unit price for milling, a unit price for the asphalt. We got the asphalt quantities correct. We actually overestimated some other quantities. Unfortunately, we underestimated the milling quantities. We learned, one of the things we learned from that one is when we went ahead and did our bid for the 2014 paving, we revised how we estimated our milling quantities, and we feel our milling quantities are
Okay.
in line, so we shouldn't have that overage this time.
Who sets the milling the milling quantity? Is it us or is it the
It's
contractor
us.
bidding on the bid?
It's us. We set the quantity based on the area we think that we expect to mill. And what happened was we had said that on a couple of the roads, specifically Stratfield Drive and on Dunwoody Place, that we were going to, what we call edge mill, which is mill the area right by the curb only. But in both those cases, the buildup was so thick at the curb line, we had to mill the entire road. So we had estimated milling about 3 feet from the curb line into the roadway so we were doing about maybe 6 feet on either side, or 3 feet on either side of the road for the length of the road. We ended up having to mill the entire width of the road because of the buildup on there. And that was the biggest difference in the milling, was just, we underestimated that. That was,
Well, it looks like on the sidewalks, you're coming in under estimates.
in sidewalks, we, for the most part, coming in underestimate. There's a few that are coming in higher because of some unforeseen conditions or some things that, mainly either drainage or things like trees or things that are getting in the, that we didn't estimate to begin with. But for the most part, on the sidewalks, they're coming in. And we feel in 2014 paving that we did a better job of, we took more time and look at it, and we learned from this first 2013 paving on the estimates, so.
So Curtis Drive is getting both all new sidewalks and a new road. Are those being
Right.
coordinated or at the same?
They're
back to
going to
back?
be coordinated. They're actually two different contractors at two different times. The sidewalk is going to go in first with the raised intersections is the sidewalk contractor doing that work. And then the paving is going to be, we haven't set the schedule for the paving yet, but it'll be after the sidewalks will be done and that contractor will be out of the way before the paving work is done.
So this is the
Summer.
sidewalk that goes all the way across in front of Cross Keys and Woodland?
It's in front of Woodland Elementary. There's already sidewalk on the Cross Keys side of the road.
Okay.
Why don't you point it out?
Woodward Elementary.
Woodward, sorry. Let me just get my bearings right.
No, it's actually on
So-
Corskey side.
Where's,
This is the elementary school here.
Okay.
And this is, you can see the tennis courts for the high school. The high school is on this
Back
side of the
over
road.
there, okay.
So this is the front entrance of the elementary school. There's existing sidewalk around the front of the elementary school, so it stops right here with where the existing crosswalk is.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah,
Susan?
zoom into, there. So what we're doing at this location is we're extending the sidewalk along to where the existing parking lot is in this
Push it
area
up a little
here.
bit. Push it that way. There you go. Is the side crosswalks at the bottom, right?
Yeah, this is
is that the raised crosswalk?
the raised, and this is going to be a new raised crosswalk. There we go.
Thank you.
I'll do it that way. I'll move it around this way. Yeah. So this is going to be, the existing crosswalk is right here. We're actually shifting it down a little bit and putting in a raised crosswalk. Extending the sidewalk down to where there's a existing asphalt area where the trailers are. We're going to use that as the sidewalk to cover that area.
Okay.
Go around. We'll continue the sidewalk on around the curve. we'll be putting a retaining wall along that curve to minimize the slope impacts, save some trees, also save a utility pole that we won't have to move. And we'll be doing another raised crosswalk down here at the back entrance to the school. And also associated with that, we are going to fix several sections of sidewalk on the Cross Keys side of the road that is broken up.
So the sidewalk is on the elementary school side?
The new sidewalk will be on the elementary school side. There's already sidewalk on the high school side. We are going to repair several areas of sidewalk that are broken up on that side of the road as well. So, I mean, we're replacing some damaged sidewalk.
How wide are these sidewalks?
These will be 5 foot wide, which is the standard width of sidewalk. A lot of that is, especially once you get around that curve, we're really tight because we don't want, there's the ground, there's a big embankment there that rises up, and we're trying to minimize how far back we cut into that and, putting the retaining wall in there.
So the situation, just so you all hear it, what exists at this is you have the sidewalk on the high school side, but when those kids exit out, of which we know a lot of them walk, 80% of those children are walking, they have to go down this road with no sidewalk, go around that curve, which has an embankment, which forces them onto the street.
Right.
No, it's terrible.
It's,
Well, I want the county school system would seem like they would have a,
okay, it's being, this is how it's going to have to get handled.
Yeah.
And-
We're fixing it, and so this is really an important step. I'm putting all of my money into this as the councilman with what I'm allocated to do because it's involved. Thank you, Richard, because we also need the raised road suppressors.
Raised crosswalk, which will help slow the traffic down
Right,
there.
and the signage, that really needs to be upgraded.
So we are upgrading the signage around that curve as well, adding additional chevron signs and curve warning signs to make drivers aware of that curve. Also, not by the sidewalk contract, but also as a part of this, we also are going to be installing school flashers on either end. They're not shown on this plan because the actual location of them is off the picture. But we, on both approaches to Curtis, even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour already road, we're going to still install the school flashers on the approaches.
well, I'd just like to say, Richard, good job on this.
Thank you.
I know sometimes we jump on you, but I like the way you've displayed this. I appreciate it.
I have one little request, though.
Yes.
It's always irritated me when I drive down Curtis that this gaggle of trees right here, it's all over the sidewalks. I mean, I don't know who owns that property, but either we need to get our code people on it, or we need to just declare it right away and cut it back, but it's a mess.
I think you're talking about the ones further back towards North Druid Hills.
Well, it may be, but.
Those are the ones at the school. Those are on school property right there.
Right.
Well, the ones that actually cover the chunks of the new sidewalk that we put in there previous.
Oh, that's further up the road with.
Can we get on that?
I can look at that. I'll have I'll have our folks look at it and.
What's the point of sidewalks if
Right.
they're covered with debris and
Oh, I agree.
branches?
I agree.
Okay.
And some of it is, this is where it gets in with the school, is some of it is school property. And I know from my experience in other cities, not necessarily in Brookhaven, but sometimes
Is it our right of way, though?
it's our right of way, but a lot of it is the school is supposed to be maintaining the
Well, let's just take
landscaping.
ownership of it.
I mean, we can add it to our list. That's what we'll either look at and have it own it. If it is further up off school property and it's private property owners, we'll work with our code enforcement and either add it to our list or have code enforcement work with those property owners.
Have code enforcement work with the school?
They can work with school, but I just know from past experience, it's somewhat easier just to do it
Property
ourselves.
owners and then not citing the
Yeah,
school. I mean, that just
yeah.
doesn't.
Well, Bates and I
agree.
just had a great 2-hour meeting with Superintendent Thurman today, so.
Okay.
We're going to have quarterly meetings, and we'll just add this to our agenda
Yeah.
if it's, I just want those kids to feel a sense of pride and,
I
you know,
agree.
that when they walk to school and they ought to be proud of these new sidewalks, and they shouldn't be covered with trees and debris. Okay?
Thank you. Thank
So,
you very
Richard,
much.
I want you to take a good look here. This is a happy council.
I agree.
okay?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, good.
I'm trying my best to keep you all happy. So.
Thank you.
Appalachia is, they're scheduled to be done right
Out
after
of order, ma'am.
Curtis. Yes. sorry. But it is on the list. We have a work order for Appalachia as well. Once the contractor, it's the contractor that's doing Curtis, so once he's done with Curtis, he'll move on to Appalachia. And the contractor that's doing Humility is the other one we have. And that one, I'm still going back and forth with the contractor. His price came in a little bit high, and I'm trying to work with them and look at options. That's the one that's during Drew Valley, so I'm working this week and next week to get Humility straightened up so he can move right from Drew Valley onto Humility and get that done this summer.
What about, when do we do our 2014 sidewalk?
We need to be starting to pick those now because, we want to get these in the planning process. Well, as easy as some of these sidewalks were to get constructed, we're running out of our easy, and you saw how long some of these took to even get on the ground. We're running out of some of our easy options. So a lot of the options we're going to be looking at for 2014, we're going to have to hire a designer or an outside consultant engineer to design plans for them. I mean, some doing these as design build or really getting a contractor and just building them. We had ones that we could do that this year.
We'll
but
try and find some more easy ones for the
Well,
time
if we
being.
can find easy ones, but some of them, and I have, we've developed a list I can get with the city manager to get that list out to you of, where we've been getting complaints, where we've been addressed. Part of what we're doing in 2014, we have said we were going to do Windsor Phase 2 as part of the 2014, which we already have a PO or a price ready to go on that. And we'll have the contractor, once we get these last group done on 2013, we'll let that contractor go on that one to get it underway.
I'd like to find some around parks this time as well.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
heard some
But
for about Skyland Park.
I would still make schools a priority.
Yeah.
And I've got a list, and I've got the list, and the list is more exhaustive than what we have money to do this year. And it's a matter of, from that list, or if you all have any other suggestions to add to that list, but it's a pretty extensive list of locations where we have gotten, either we've identified where there's gaps in the sidewalks along arterials and collectors, or we have gotten notices from residents or requests from residents to look at sidewalks in certain areas.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what I was going to say is that the list that Richard is talking about, we'll share that with you. Remember, we have mid-year budget adjustment coming up in July, and we'll identify those, you'll prioritize those, and then he'll be able to let contracts
great.
on that. So that is the
Yeah.
dates for what
Yeah.
we're going to be working on, so that
Or concrete.
this year, the Christmas presents will be there, available to walk on by Christmas, if not before.
Yeah, that's the idea. We don't want to wait till December to start building these. We want to start turning around and getting contractors, either contractors working, or for those that if we do have to hire a designer, get a designer under contract and getting plans so we can get these bid out
And just let
build this fall, summer and fall.
A lot of our ideas for sidewalks come from us, and it comes from hearing from neighbors, obviously,
Right.
and what you're going to be giving us too. But I'd like to let the citizens know that if we get a lot of emails about a certain area, you probably get a little more attention to.
Windsor was exactly that way.
Right, so if you have a sidewalk in your area, folks.
Hang on,
let us
Richard.
know.
One more comment.
Yes.
Is it standard procedure that all the affected property owners get some kind of notice before we do the sidewalk? in
Yeah,
front of
we're
their house?
doing, a lot of it, we're just, some of these, like on Windsor Parkway, we had a public meeting just because of the number.
Right.
We had like 50-plus and sent letters. Some of the ones like Drew Valley, really what we're doing is we're going before the construction starts and just knocking on the door and talking individually, one-on-one. Appalachia, we're doing the same way, talking with the individual property owners one-on-one.
Door
Good,
hangers.
Good.
If they're not there, door hangers with a letter, but, I mean, we're making face-to-face contact with
Thank
the
you.
property owners.
Right.
That are affected by the sidewalk construction
Yeah.
itself.
I think certainly as a minimum, if we can notify people with a letter, if we can't talk to them.
Right.
It's important that people just don't get, all of a sudden, they come home and they get a shock.
We
Like somebody's
have
dug
a-
up their
Tulips are gone.
begonias.
Yeah.
Right. We have a letter that not a generic letter, because we do customize it per project, but we don't
Right.
customize it per property owner.
Right.
We have a letter template that we use, but we actually go out there and knock on the door, have one of our staff knock on the door and to discuss it with them.
Great.
But
Thank
you know, Richard, the more we can put out information about upcoming paving and push it out through our
Yes.
communications folks, because you and I both know that even when you've gone door to door in the subject
Yeah.
home, sometimes the entire neighborhood behind it also wants to know about the project.
And with the paving, I mean, in addition to on the streets that we will be paving, putting door hangers on the doors of the homes themselves, mainly because we don't need them parking on the street for those days. We are also going to be use our communications department to put out notices of what roads we'll be doing, because from a traffic control standpoint, that's going to be, especially when we get to Ashford, Dunwoody, or Lenox Park, or Dresden, we're going to need to let people know that we're going to be doing paving on those roads, especially if we end up doing it during the daytime, because that's going to affect traffic. So.
Thank
We're going
you.
to send Mike in the truck with the big sound horn going through the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Richard. All right, next.
Okay, next item for reports and announcements is the zoning map update. I'm pleased to tell you, I'm going to work backwards, that we will have a council hearing and consideration for adoption of the revised zoning map on August the 12th, and this is how we're going to notify the public. Beginning June 12th and 19th and the 26th, there is an ad that will be appearing, giving notice. We'll also have signs, June 12th, 19th, and 26th. We're also going to have signs posted. This is just a courtesy public notice at City Hall, Blackburn Park, Curtis Drive at Buford Highway, and then we'll have an open house for everybody to review the zoning map on June the 30th. We will then present, I'm just going through some notes here.
While you're doing that, is anybody chilly? No? Okay, well.
I was roasting.
Okay, June the 24th, we're going to provide the revised official zoning map. We will send an ad to the paper June the 25th so that the public hearing ad will run the July 3rd, July 7th, and July 17th. We're going to be sure the public is duly notified. We'll, of course, run this on our website. We're going to also order signs again for posting at City Hall, Blackburn Park, Curtis Drive at Buford Highway, again announcing the public hearings. And then we will have, we'll place the zoning map on the website beginning June the 27th to receive comments from the public regarding any discrepancies. And then we're going to require any kind of written documentation. If the public finds that perhaps on their property that the zoning is wrong, and they have evidence to show that it is correct, because remember, we've gone through an intensive labor of going through records, minutes, meeting with county staff, and so what we believe is what the county has given us and what we've discovered is correct and updated. And then the final vetting of the map is going to occur between GIS and city staff and Pond and Company, who's done the work, July the 7th, and then July 23rd, we'll have a special called Planning Commission meeting. This is the only item on their agenda to review the revised zoning map, and then it will be transmitted to the council for August the 12th at 7 p.m. So plenty of time, plenty of opportunity for the public to review. We are encouraging the public to take a look at this map and give us their feedback and comment, and especially if they find an error, if they have evidence to show otherwise, we're going to need that because the records that we have indicate what we put on the map is what the official zoning is.
Well, I know this is taking a long time. It's a thorough process. I appreciate it, and so look forward to seeing that.
Well, thank you, and
Thank you.
I'd like to be sure that Susan Cannon and her staff, along with Pond and Company, they've done just a extremely great job. Really
Thank you.
pleased with them.
Can't wait to see the final product. All right, police, excuse me.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I've just been reminded that also on the 23rd of July, there is one other item in addition to the revised zoning map, and that is the comprehensive plan.
Oh, really?
So that's
July
moving
23rd?
along.
That's
The
ahead of
draft
schedule?
Right, it's on schedule, and we'll be giving you some other updates as we get prepped for that. We have open houses coming up as well, so stand by.
All right, the police court building update? Do you want to?
Yes, just real quick, August the 1st, that weekend is a Friday, that's the move-in date for the court. I've met with the judge. She has walked the building, looked at the courtroom. She's very excited about it. She does have a trial coming up August the 11th, and she is going to hold that at Corporate Square. So that will remain there, but all of the business will be conducted at the new court location in the
All right.
police department headquarters. It's looking really good, in fact.
Thank you. All right, and the public hearing items.
Yes, the first item, before Ms. Klein makes her presentation, I do want to make a comment, and so that we understand exactly what we're doing. We're just making a presentation. This will not constitute the first public hearing. We do need to add what will be a fourth meeting, but a third public hearing, and I'm recommending June the 30th at 10:30 a.m. We have to complete all of our public hearings prior to July 1 because the tax digest gets sent by the county. So, of course, you're going to be out at GMA, so we'll be missing days. If you're in agreement, we would like to push that out on our website tonight,
Okay.
June the 30th. Our next public hearings are going to be on June the 17th at 10:30 in the morning and at 7 p.m. at night. So we'll have two hearings on the 17th, and the last official public hearing will be June the 30th, and tonight is a prelude
Okay, thank you.
of what you're going to be hearing again. So,
right.
Ms. Klein?
Which one is it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do just a real abbreviated version, Bonnie, and then we'll do it in the regular session, the
Yeah,
fuller.
she's got one page that will go on. Is that what you're asking?
I'd like to see it.
It's not there?
Is it-
We'll have a slide in the
Okay.
7 o'clock meeting that Susan has.
Okay.
Actually, I just had one slide, just reminding people that the proposed rate is 2.85 mils, which is the same as it was last year. So if your assessment done by the county didn't change, your taxes won't change.
Right.
If it went down, you could save. There are some properties definitely went up in value. In all, the digest is up 14%. 75% of that is due to reassessment of properties. There it is. And 25% is due to new additions to the digest. Some of that is the county finding things that might have been there last year. We added cars. Last year, the DeKalb County got the ad valorem on the cars, and now we are entitled to it. And just a reminder of the remaining public hearings. Next Tuesday, the 17th, there'll be two, 10:30 and 7. And then the fourth one that we've added, June 30 at 10:30.
Okay. All right. Next.
I had a question, Bonnie. Would you, if you're knowledgeable about these two issues, would you remind people about the basic homestead exemption? If people have not, do you have to apply for that in DeKalb County?
You apply at the county. If you qualify for the county, they automatically put it on your city bill
Right.
also.
And then-
The city exemption is actually higher than the county, so.
And then also the property tax assessment freeze as a,
Same thing.
So
If you-
it has to be
Same
applied
time you
for.
apply for the homestead exemption.
it would freeze your property tax assessment.
right.
For the duration of your ownership of the home, is that correct?
That's the way it's,
Right.
works
Well,
now, yeah.
I read through that ordinance and I saw that that it says in there that it does not apply to the school assessment. So if your home value goes up in the school tax assessment, they still would see an appreciation.
Exactly, right.
But it also applies for the city.
Well, there's two separate ones, but if you qualify at the county level, you get it at the city also.
So it would freeze it for the city?
It would freeze it for the city and the
Right, good.
county, right.
Good.
And when do you apply for that?
Typically, people apply for it the year they purchase their house. Is that right?
I want to say April 1st each year, but once you apply, you don't have to renew
Right,
it.
it's
It stays
done.
with it.
All right.
It's a reminder that bill, I think, was passed almost 10 years ago, and I just don't know that everybody knows about it. When I talk to people about it, a lot of people are not sure that they've heard about it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor, when we do get to this item, if you would just announce that it is not a public hearing.
Okay. But even though it says it there.
Right, correct. But we will make the presentation anyway. All right, item number 2 is RZ 13-15 Atlanta Resource Center rezoning request from R100 to C1 at 1296, 1302, 1304 Kendrick Road. Susan will handle that and the next
Right.
several items under public hearing.
As the city manager indicated, this is RZ 1315. This particular rezoning case has been around for some time. As you know, it's gone back and forth between the Planning Commission and City Council and was heard by the Planning Commission last week. The Planning Commission did recommend denial of this request. The request is to rezone from R100 to C1 to allow for the a parking lot in conjunction with a requested or a future expansion of the Nuts and Berries business, which is actually located adjacent to the subject property. The staff did recommend a denial of the C1 request in that the comprehensive plan that applies to this property does not allow for the seeking of a C1 zoning on this site. We did recommend an alternative zoning which would be compatible with the comp plan, and that is neighborhood shopping. We have recommended approval with several conditions which would condition this to the site plan, which is for the parking lot. You have received quite a bit of correspondence as late as today and as of yesterday, and I know that you've all received several emails. We also received some emails from the applicant today, so they'll certainly, the applicant will certainly be here tonight. It's certainly not my position to present their case to you, but rather to lay out for you what we've recommended. In your packet on page 190 and 191, you will see the list of the conditions recommended by the staff, and basically that concludes the report.
All right, thank you. Next one.
Okay, next one's RZ 14-07, Mosaic Homes LLC, R75 to RA8. Susan?
As the city manager indicated, this is RZ 1407. For whatever reason, this particular packet is not in your binder. I'm not exactly sure what happened, and it also appears as though part of case 1408 is merged. It's probably a software glitch. It merged in with 1407. So if you could please ignore in your packet pages 329 through 346, as those comment cards do not relate to RZ 1407.
Right.
This is a request for rezoning from R75 to RA8 to construct a 34-unit single-family attached development for property located at 3600 Donaldson Drive. The site contains 4.296 acres, and it's currently occupied by Saquon Baptist Church. And the subject property is identified on the future development map as suburban. They requested a 34-unit development results in a density of 7.9 dwelling units per acre, whereas the suburban character area allows up to 8 per acre. The staff recommended approval of this request, subject to the conditions that you'll see in your packet. Actually, in the attachment, as the packet, for whatever reason, does not include it. When the staff recommended approval of this request, we asked that, Susan, if you can rotate that and maybe slide it up on the screen.
Everybody has their windows down in their car. It's getting pretty nasty outside.
So dark.
Is there any way you can you flip it or enlarge it? Ooh, that's a serious eye test.
I know you. Yeah.
Right-click,
Yeah, I know.
right-click on it. You should see a rotate.
Oh, look at this. We've got it in our packet, Susan. I mean, we'll do, just, we'll have it,
Okay, if
we'll have
there's,
it
if you
figured out
can,
for the regular
if
meeting.
you look to the, kind of the south of the screen where there are 2 units, there are roads that surround those 2 units. We recommended that those be removed from that location, which lowered the development by 2 units, and also there's a request for realignment of the roadway with Danbury Place across the street. So
Did you get a response from the applicant on that?
we did receive a response from the applicant. They actually submitted, in response to our request, they did revise their plan, and I'm sure they'll be here with it tonight.
And so we can approve the, if, even though that's not in the packet, we can approve their revised plan?
You can. It's actually a reaction to the staff's requested conditions. And their revised plan does relocate the entryway.
Right.
It still does include 1 additional unit. However, the staff's issue was...
Lost 1 unit too, though, right?
Yes, that instead of 34 units, it's now 33. We had recommended 32. But it was basically to get rid of the 2 units that were surrounded by roads. So the issue really for the staff is not the density, it's the design of the plan with the location of the driveway and with the drives surrounding the units.
All right.
So we've recommended approval with the conditions that are in your packet.
Thank you. All right. Next.
Next item, ordinance, consideration and approval of RZ 1408.
That particular item will not be considered tonight for public hearing. The Planning Commission deferred that case.
Okay, all right.
It will be heard by the Planning Commission on July 9th, and it will come back to the council on July 22nd. Thank you.
All right, so we don't need to go over the corking again. The call for election.
Correct.
Susan? Hyatt?
Yes, as you know, Councilmember of District 2 resigned, and we're going to have an election to fill that position, and we're calling for the election. We'll be placing an ad in the paper, and we're setting the qualifying dates as August 19, 20, and 21. That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we'll be advertising all that, and we'll have it on the website, so
And the election date would be?
November 4th.
Okay.
I've had some concern expressed that we just really make a good effort to get this information out, especially to the people of District 2. So I would ask our communications people to use all the weapons in your toolbox and make sure that we're on their Google list and any HOA lists that are out there. It's important.
Maybe a postcard, a small little, just to that district? All right.
And it's nice that those people wanting to qualify would just have to come right here to City Hall,
Yes, they
correct?
qualify with the clerk's office, and I'm closed for a lunch for an hour, but those 3 days is 8:30 to 12:30, and then 1:30 to 4:30.
All right.
Great.
Just like always.
And we have a notary. They have to notarize, but we can notarize it for them here.
I'll take care of it.
Right. Great.
All right. I think that's it.
It is.
All right. So we are, is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn the works. Do we have any kind of executive session?
Yes.
That's for the regular, or is it now?
Oh, it's on this one.
Oh, it
Work.
is?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
go
it's-
back to the
Executive session.
motion for that.
What's the purpose?
Purpose is to discuss litigation and personnel matters
And contracts.
and contracts.
Is there a second?
I second.
Or do we have a
What,
motion?
did you motion?
No, I didn't make a motion. I moved that we move into executive session to
I was doing
discuss,
so good I did so bad last week. I was doing so much better this week.
personnel matter, contract, and litigation.
Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and offer my second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All in favor of going into the executive session, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we're in executive session. And we'll come out and adjourn and have our other meeting, yeah. Is there a motion?
I move that we adjourn the executive session.
I second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of adjourning executive session, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I move that we end the work session.
For a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of adjourning the work session, signify so by saying aye.
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 Now we're adjourned.